How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end?
Marky got with Sharon, Sharon got Sharia. She was sharing Sharon's outlook on the topic of disease. Mikey had a facial scar and Bobby was a racist. They were all in love with dying, they were doing it in Texas. Tommy played piano like a kid out in the rain, and then he lost his leg in Dallas. He was dancing with the train. They were all in love with dying, they were drinking from a fountain that was pouring like an avalanche coming down the mountain.
I don't mind the sun sometimes, the images it shows. I can taste you on my lips and smell you in my clothes.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Rum links, 2, 3, rum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich heim in die Arbeit einweist und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich heim in die Arbeit einweist und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, 2, 3, drum links, 2, 3, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich heim in die Arbeit einweist und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to a special edition of Socialism Live. I probably need to get a special intro song made for when we're not doing this on Saturdays. I should probably do that because, you know, it's not actually Saturday, as it turns out. Because Saturday's my birthday, and none of you better forget, and you all better be showing up to Socialism Saturday with those super chats. Don't think I won't be paying attention. But right now it's Thursday, and so why are we watching Socialism on a Thursday? And why do I have something stuck in my eye the minute, like, I didn't have anything stuck in my eye until like 30 seconds ago, and now I do. Anyway, so why are we watching Socialism now? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Socialists over at Haymarket Books. Haymarket Books is, of course, our favorite socialist book publishers. They are holding a live stream in a couple of minutes. They've actually already started it. They're doing their countdown about how MAGA's winning and they're losing, which is interesting because I don't actually believe that's true. And I think a lot of people don't actually believe that's true. But socialists, of course, as you guys know, they always have to believe that they are losing because for them, the revolution is perpetual. And I want to see what they think. I think this is going to be hilarious. I think that we are going to hear the socialists say some crazy, unhinged, deranged things because they don't actually understand MAGA. They don't actually understand the right. Just like the right has no clue about who these people are or what they believe, these people have no clue about how dysfunctional MAGA is and how pissed off people are at Trump. And so it's like both sides, neither side listens to the other side. We, of course, listen to everyone, which is why we hate them all. Which is why we are tribalists. Nathaniel, in with the member chat. Thank you for being a member of the channel. Nathaniel, I can't make it to Saturday, but I shall try my best to make up for my absence today. Well, I appreciate that. You know, it's okay to miss my birthday. It's okay. I turn 29 every single year. So before we get into that, and it should be starting very soon, guys, I just want to remind everyone that my newest book, which is my first novel, my first attempt at fiction, and I think it went pretty well. It is called The Communist Manifesto, a Revolutionary Fairy Tale. It is available over on Amazon now. This is a dystopian fairy tale based on the Communist Manifesto. If you like 1984, if you like The Hunger Games, if you like Brave New World, if you like Fahrenheit 451, if you like The Giver, if you like those types of dystopian stories, I think you're really going to like this book. And honestly, if you're on the left, I think you'll appreciate the first 3 parts of the book because the first 3 parts talk about the communist revolution. The last 2 parts of the book, you know, they talk about the reality of what happens after the communist revolution. But I think that I portrayed it faithfully while also being true to what has happened literally every single time communism has been tried in the history of the world. So if you want to read the story, head over to Amazon, pick up your copy today, and leave a review if you've already read it and let people know what you think. We are jumping right into it, guys. I just got to get my sound set up. They're still getting ready over on their end. Please, of course, mount the like button for me if you would be so kind. We will be doing a live stream today like normal at 5 p.m. We will be doing Counter-Revolutionary Book Club at 5 p.m. Hopefully I will get a chance to restart my computer before I do that so I don't like just do this weird thing that I'm doing. Anyway, it is a good book. I'm not even joking. My book is awesome. It is, So, you know, and I'm not just saying that because I wrote it. I actually think it's a really, really good book. Hey, Nathaniel in with a real super chat. 29? You thought I was turning 24, 25? Oh, God, no. Oh, those are horrible years, Nathaniel. Those are horrible years. No, I'm turning 29, of course. No, Sarah, it's not on Audible because I have not made an audiobook. So unless it's I have not made an audiobook yet, maybe I will, but I'm not planning on it right this second because I have too much other stuff to do. Anyway, guys, mount the like button for me. It looks like the presentation is getting started. This is going to be a promo for... Oh, Jesse! We know Jesse Hagopian. This is going to be for the Socialism Conference, see? All right, if you go over to their chat, be nice, okay? Do not... And I mean this. Do not disrupt their chat. Do not shitpost in their chat. Do not spam in their chat. We will be watching their chat. If I see any of you over there being disruptive or shitposting or spamming, I will ban you from my chat because you are disobeying my expressed wishes. We do not disrupt their events. What we do is we try to ask very thoughtful and relevant questions to get them to say things that we need them to say out loud. If you are disrupting, if you are trolling, if you are shitposting, if you are not following my specific instructions, you are inhibiting our ability to actually get them to say the quiet part out loud. So I do not allow that shit. It is a very, 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 very short leash, because I will not have one of those communities that behaves like unhinged retards on the internet, okay? We are better than that. Our job here is to listen to what they have to say and to ask questions so we can get them to say things. And if you're disrupting, they're going to be less likely to actually answer our questions because they're going to suspect everyone of being a trolly asshole, okay? So it's not about you. It's not about your feelings. If you want to own the libs, you can go do it somewhere else. We're going to be tuning into the socialism event now. Thank you guys for your consideration. Autumn is there. Of course, Autumn is there.
I don't understand how we can ultimately dismantle any of it if we don't stick to it.
This is just a commercial, so I'm going to talk a little bit more. Guys, we are going to be doing Counter-Revolutionary Book Club at 5 p.m. today. If you've never done Counter-Revolutionary Book Club with us before, we are reading the most dystopian queer and gender activism documents that exist on the internet. We are working our way through a collection of essays called Queering Anarchism. We did part 1 of that last week, but if you missed part 1, it's okay, because this is an essay collection. So it is a book, but it's also an essay collection. So every episode will be different. I believe we're going to be reading the Queering Marriage essay today. And so you can come and join us for that at 5 p.m. if you would like. Anyway, let's tune in now. Oh, no, they're still doing this is their weird little creepy ad that they play before. Well, okay, Autumn is making a plea in the socialist chat saying, Karlyn, unblock me. Autumn, maybe you should try chatting in and seeing if you're blocked, okay? Autumn, come on. Be fucking smarter. Maybe you should try chatting in and seeing if you're actually blocked. That might be a good first step, Autumn, okay? Hey, Nick, thank you for being a member of the channel. As you embark on your 29th trip around the earth, may it be glorious and continue your adventure in writing. And Victor spoiling me like the ultimate queen. I'll tell you what, Victor is literally in the doghouse right now because he gave my chihuahua a bath earlier, and the chihuahua is so pissed off. Like, I've never seen the chihuahua this pissed off before. So everyone send your love to Victor. He has a dog that is very, 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 very upset at him in the house, and the dog won't even be in the same room with him because the dog's so pissed off that the dog got a bath. And I heard this happening this morning. I was still in bed. I hear the dog squeaking and crying. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing to the dog? And he's like, I'm just giving her a bath. So, and she's like off in the other room. She's so mad. She won't let anyone touch her. I tried to pick her up and pet her, and she was shaking. She was so traumatized by having a bath. You can tell how often my dogs get groomed because the chihuahua. I was like, honey, you've got to calm down. It was just a bath. You're going to survive. I swear to God. I know he had to clean something off that you got in, but like, I know how traumatic a bath can be. But the dog is so pissed. Anyway, their event is starting. Let's get back to that.
Instructions for accessing the captions will be posted in the chat. We should have time for Q&A, so please post your questions in the YouTube chat window, and we'll get to those later in the program. Thanks for joining us today. Our event will begin shortly.
I don't understand how we can also.
All right, socialists, begin the event. We're ready. Yeah, never to wash a chihuahua. The chihuahua will never, ever, ever forgive you. Apparently, is what we have learned today in my house. But that's not my problem. I didn't give the chihuahua a bath. I just gave the chihuahua comfort later. I even tried to give her a piece of cheese. My chihuahua was so traumatized by getting a bath this morning that she didn't even eat a piece of cheese that I gave her. So the other dog snuck right up and stole the piece of cheese. I'm like, you know what? Chihuahua doesn't even want to live. The Chihuahua has lost the will to live after having a bath. She'll get over it. Yeah, she wouldn't even eat the cheese. Didn't even trust the cheese. Well, yeah, see, the thing is, Chris, we do actually have to cut her nails. That is like the next step now, is like getting the Chihuahua. And I was looking it up. I was like, can we give the dog like Benadryl or something, or like melatonin in order to calm her the F down before we try to cut her nails? Because she's getting older and she's getting cranky. It didn't used to be this hard. I think my Chihuahua is getting older and cranky, and that's why she's getting extra pissed off. She's like this like curmudgeon old lady that literally just wants to be left alone and to look out the window. That's all she wants. And here we are trying to give her a bath and cut her nails, and she's not having it. I was like, maybe we can bribe her with a banana or something. Like Victor can hold the banana up and I can cut the nails. I don't know. It's going to have to be a team effort. It's going to take 2 adults to cut the nails of a Chihuahua. Okay.
Thank you so much for those of you who are able to join us for this super important conversation. My name is Karlyn Rojas, and I'm the president and CEO of Marguerite Casey Foundation. At Marguerite Casey, our mission is to build a country where our government prioritizes the needs of excluded and underrepresented people. We believe that true social change requires shifting the balance of power in society, ensuring that communities historically left out of decision-making have a voice in shaping how government works and sharing in its rewards and freedoms. Turning to today's conversation, we are in a moment of rapid political change and profound threat. I don't want to act like what we're experiencing in the US is unique or special. Many places around the world have experienced the rich and powerful looting public institutions. Many have experienced performative elections and watched institutions that seem durable crumble in the matter of years. And many have experienced violent repression as the main way that people interact with the government. That said, there are important questions that we need to answer about how we got here and how we're going to make our way forward together. One of the developments that we must understand is the way that the right wing is actually working to organize people who have long not been a part of their agenda, people who have traditionally identified as progressive, frankly, especially communities of color and young people. What's undeniable is that there's a growing demographic and social diversity within
the
many
right wing is organizing progressives.
And I think it's really important for us to ask why and how these movements have grown in this way.
Socialists think that MAGA is recruiting progressives. That is hilarious.
Why and how of this shift. And most importantly, to understand what needs to be true to create a world that includes all of us living lives of dignity and thriving communities and acting as collective stewards of our well-being. So without further ado, I'm thrilled to introduce our expert guides for today's conversation. First is Daniel Martinez-Hosang, who's a professor of American Studies at Yale and co-editor of the forthcoming volume, The Politics of the Multiracial Right. He is the author or co-editor of 6 other books on social movements and racial justice, and a current Race and Democracy Fellow within the Roosevelt Institute. Micah English is a PhD candidate at Yale University studying American politics and an organizer within Unite Here Local 33. Micah researches Black politics, social movement engagement, and mobilization, and their intersection with sexuality and gender. I'm also delighted to introduce our commentator, Gihan Pereira. Gihan brings a vital perspective to today's conversation as someone who's spent over 25 years as a community organizer. He's the co-founder of the Miami Workers Center and the Right to the City Alliance, and was the executive director of Florida New Majority, now Florida Rising, which gave him insight into the political transformations in diverse communities. So first and foremost, thank you three for being here today. I'm so grateful to be in this conversation with you. I'm going to start with you, Danny. So I have personally found your insights and growth on the multiracial right to be helpful as I personally make sense of how we got here. I appreciate how you think about like the experience in the MAGA universe. Can you start by telling us about these conferences, what they're like, and what might surprise people about these spaces?
He's gone into conservative conferences.
First, Carmen, it's so good to be in conversation with you, and welcome everyone, and thanks to him.
What's he gone
for hosting us. I just want to start off by saying something that I hear from you quite a bit, which is, look, this is not about finger pointing, electoral blaming, who's more culpable. That's not what we're here to do. It's not hot takes on, what's the latest there. These are long-term trends. The second very quick thing I want to say, this is also not about how do we be more like the right? How do we appeal? How do we join in on the transphobia and the nativism? That's not what we're doing here either. Understanding is not just repeating back. And third, and I just so appreciate it, Micah, you talk about the whole time.
They're copying me. They're doing me.
Dynamics. We go to these conferences thinking we know one thing, maybe it means something else. So I just want to hold open as many questions as we do kind of answers here. So let me, we're going to start out, we have some images for you, and I'll just say, we had, with my co-author, Joe Lowndes, we wrote this book about 6 years ago, Producers, Parasites, Patriots, which was really about the new ways that the right wing was deploying race, these new cohort of young, like fairly young Black conservatives, people like Tim Scott and Mia Love were coming there. We like something is changing here, but it was a little less on the kind of who is it bringing in. It was more what the party is doing, what the institutions, what militia. Joe had been going to right-wing events for some time, and we said, we got to understand it from the other side, sitting in the audience. What's the experience? And so that's what led us to Turning Point USA. And let me just set the stage here.
Point.
This is 13,000 people in the Phoenix Convention Center in the middle of December. Almost everyone getting there on their own. In other words, this is not churches paying and flying in people. I'd say maybe half the people are under 30, 35, something like that. And so we can go to the second slide now. You'll see it's like on the one hand, like the big names in far right politics. And by the way, there's no Mitch McConnell here. There's no Lindsey Graham. There's no kind of establishment Republicans. This is the MAGA right. This is Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson, who I would say is probably the most popular figure here. So that's like the main stage. And it's very, very experiential. There's hip hop booming everywhere. There's no, you might think it's a conservative place. There's this kind of dress code. It's like a Saturday at the mall. Lots of different kinds of people there. Let's go to slide 3 now. Part of why we're going there is also to understand what Turning Point, this organization that looms really, really large now on the MAGA right, does. And part of what you see there is lots of pipelines into right-wing work, lots of on-ramps. So high school chapters organizing around lots of different things. They're giving awards to them. They're lifting them up. They're giving them trainings, etc. So very, very active in that sense. If we go to slide 4, I just want to say, you think, oh, we're going to right-wing conference. We're going to talk about tax policy and deportations.
Turning Point is
like that. What stood out to us is the photo booths. There's a photo booth, and it's so attentive in that way to experience, this sense that people are not waking up and thinking like, the tariff policy in the Netherlands at 15%, that's really frustrating me. I got to go to this to make sure it goes to 20%. Nobody's doing that. They're like, want some connection with people. And they are so attentive to that. So photo booths, I just want the vibe is one of kind of like excitement and, their branding is be a rebel. And we could smirk at that and say, come on, this is paid for, there's billionaire libertarian money there. But that sense of insurgency, this is something,
really.
This is the edgy place. It's not like the status quo. Let's go to number 5 now. I want to just say something quickly about Charlie Kirk, who founded this organization, Turning Point USA. He's a high school student in 2012. This is the height of the Obama period. Think about it, right?
Yeah.
Mitt Romney just loses.
Just said
Who wants to be a conservative in 2012? It's stuffy, it's old, it's flat. Charlie Kirk's an 18-year-old. He doesn't say, there's some talk among the Republicans, let's diversify, let's bring in new people. That's how we're going to recharge ourselves. Kirk is among another set of people. I don't think that's how we can make conservatism cool by doing something else. And you'll see these, it's a pretty racist affirmative action bake sale, these kind of trolling things. But I think he was onto something in terms of a certain fatigue with institutional politics, right? This is not like everyone write a letter to your senator and that's how we'll solve our problems. Come register to vote. There's some, a growing sense of distrust for institutions, distrust for orthodoxies. And so, I remember these affirmative action bake sales thinking, who does this? Like only someone on the far right. But they were onto something in that sense about a sensibility, right? That's just kind of like, what if we just say, skewer everything. And I'm thinking for myself. So let's go to slide 6. In a period of 6 or 7 years, this becomes a $100 million organization. He goes to all of these very wealthy donors and he's saying, we can make the right a site of energy and insurgency and youthful action. Does he take this money and build a policy shop right outside of, the Capitol where, young people can do Heritage Foundation fellowships? No. He builds a big media complex in the suburbs of Phoenix where influencers and people with their own YouTube shows and large followings appealing to different demographics where they make kits of stickers and things to send to people. So I just want to say that is there's no talk about John Locke and Milton Friedman and Ayn Rand at these, none. It is about fun and kind of experience. And I'm just going to do a last couple.
They're not
then,
libertarians, bro.
To 7.
Turning Point is not libertarian.
Away from the big stage.
There's no discussions of red.
They're
not fucking libertarians.
Workshops, organizing workshops. And these are 2 young Latinos, Chris Chavez and Matthew Martinez. And, they're funny, engaging. They're talking about building relationships, tamale parties, get out the vote, bouncy houses in the park. And, I'd say in some ways, they remind me of my students sometimes, except, they care about the world. They talk about their families. They want to bring people into civic life, but they are far, far on the right. They work for the most far right candidates. And, that's their beliefs.
No, they
and I
don't.
think it's instructive that they saw these young men and said,
unhinged.
Come through here. We have something for you. If we go to number 8, you can see these
They're
are
moderate
examples
conservatives
of,
at best.
and Mike, I might just want to invite you to come in here. Stickers. So you go through this big exhibition hall and stickers and buttons and posters. And you can see on these so much of the aesthetic and appeal and kind of design is drawn from the left. It's drawn from, that sense of kind of being outside. And I think, they recognize there isn't really a fun right-wing culture, certainly at this moment.
True.
And it's let's just take what's out there. Micah, what's your sense of that and those kinds of images?
Yeah, so something that has really struck me in these spaces is how much the right has invested in this cultural and aesthetic work that they've been doing. And you can see these stickers as a really clear example of this. But there was also so much effort that they put into the branding there, into creating parties where young people could go and meet each other, creating shared jokes and a shared type of language. And I think you can see this extend beyond just what they're doing in these spaces to what they're doing with the cultural ecosystem as a whole. And this is something that they spoke about in sessions, is how the right can increase and enhance their cultural influence, because this is something that they see as a key tool in their repertoire. And something that I've noticed they do in these spaces is that they bring you in. They offer you belonging. They say, hey, we're going to have this great session on how to talk to your neighbors, or hey, we're going to have this session on something else fun, and then they slowly politicize you. Whereas on the left,
it's a political
I think we often
event.
do the reverse, which is we say, do you have the right opinion on this? Do you use the right pronouns? Do you know the right thing to say about this? You don't? Okay, then we need you to leave, and you can come back when you have educated yourself.
Yeah,
and
the left does
that.
Do that.
Is
True.
something that they just welcome everyone in. And as a queer Black woman, the first time we went, I felt quite nervous, quite frankly, about going into this space. And I was Googling, like, what do I wear to a conservative conference so I can blend in? And I had, friends and family saying, oh my gosh, be safe. And then we got there, and I was humbled, in fact, because I felt so welcome in a very strange way. And even the last time we went, I made the decision to be open about my queerness, and I expected maybe to have a bad reaction, but no one even blinked an eye. And I'll actually say that there are some leftist spaces and progressive spaces where I feel more judgment and I feel more nervous going into, because I'm afraid I'm not going to say the right thing, and people are going to judge me or cancel me. So I think all of these dynamics were very present there and very present in the conversations I had. Not only I spoke with a lot of Black and Latino men, but I spoke with a lot of women of color as well, and some young Black women. And there is this whole idea after the election that I've heard a lot from Black women, like, we're tired, we're sitting out, 92% of us voted the right way, we keep doing this. And while I completely understand where that comes from, this also enforces this idea of purity politics, which I think are very strong in our spaces, which creates a really impossible standard of who's allowed to speak, who's allowed to have opinions, who's allowed to be messy and work things out. And Black women, we were not born perfect political theorists and figures. Like, we had to be politicized in a way that allowed us to get to a point where 92% of us are voting for this party and are exercising our politics and our activism in a way that aligns with the world we want to see. And we cannot sit out, because that's not going to solve this problem. And these forces that we're up against, that we're discussing, they depend on our absence. They depend on us wanting to sit out and being depressed and saying, oh, I'm not going to be in coalition with these people anymore because they did XYZ. And these groups are not tired. They are organizing. They are doing it in a way that is fun, in a way that is appealing. They're investing in young people, they're investing in culture, and they're showing up every day and doing it consistently, and we ignore it at our own peril.
She's going to be the next Democrat who left the left right there. No, she's not a Democrat, she's a socialist.
We're just go through a couple, then
she's a left story waiting to happen.
Micah, you can see in these stickers, we are not saying politically, like, you'll see there's anti-trans attacks, it's nativist, it's taking apart public goods, vouchers in school. So that's the kind of dissonance of it.
There's one that says, I love
thundering
education.
and often like deeply reactionary, authoritarian calls and visions, but tied to photo booths and warmth and good feeling, and not animated by a sense of like individual, demonization in the same way. So I don't, in no way, in some ways, I learned how formidable and serious and threatening the project is in much deeper ways. But the jarring part is how it's matched with this kind of sense. And that's partly we would constantly what is bringing people here? Is it the politics, or is it the photo booth? In that way. So
it's the politics.
Last couple to look at in number 9, you can see this
at Turning Point,
posters
it's the
everywhere.
politics.
So zip code education and segregation. So that's a call for vouchers and school privatization. But you can see aesthetically, it's drawn from the same representation of Black culture you'll often find on the left and in popular culture more broadly. And Blexit, their kind of Black political organizing site, holding Black History Month events. So the right that we associate is always antagonistic to identity, culture, race, and belonging is actually borrowed so much of that. from those spaces. And if we go to number 10, you'll see this, there's at this last one, this huge session on Black conservatism. I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of people there. And it's not a de-racialized Black conservatism, right? I'm colorblind, race doesn't matter. They talk about race and racism, but they will tie it then to their support for the police, their support for borders, their support sometimes for deportations. And that's the part that I think people don't get it. On the left, there's this photo of this. It was a kind of amazing moment. This older white guy kind of says, look, I have to acknowledge there was deep and profound racism in my family, and I raised it, and it took me a lot to overcome it. And I'm sorry for it. And then he goes up on stage and hugs them, and everybody stands up and claps. And I think while they're then calling for the next round of deportations, or even clampdowns on BLM protesters. So that's what I mean about all the things. And let's just go to the last one, number 11. This is an image of the media hall. There's dozens and dozens. This is not Fox News or even One World Network. Dozens of YouTubers and podcasters. You can see the right-wing media ecosystem. It's much bigger than Joe Rogan or the people with large audiences, and it's really, really diverse in surprising kinds of ways. So, Carmen, that's a snapshot. It's very attentive to feeling, and we just went this last time with Mike and I went with a group of 5 other undergrads, recent graduate students, just to say, how do we make sense of what are people getting out of this? And I think they get to, as Mike has said, a reactionary politics, but that's not what gets them in the door.
Yeah, it's so funny. I have a set of questions. I want to ask you all of them in exact order, but I'm going to veer off and just sort of plant some question seeds. So I don't like the immaculate conception origin story of people, right? I made Microsoft in my garage. There's always a context in which somebody becomes who they are. And so I'm curious about Charlie Kirk. I'm just going to put that as an asterisk. I think that, Micah, your point, the thing that sits with me is this notion of toxic deference on the left, that we have sort of fallen back on, to this idea that there is a hierarchy of pain and suffering and that only certain people are allowed to speak on certain things. But more importantly, that when people actually act outside of ideological or political alignment, we can't hold them accountable because of their identity. We don't have the words. And it sounds like, as I'm hearing you guys, one, that it is so porous and relational, the spaces that they are creating, but that there's also a different, in the caricature I think that the left has of the right is that they unify around identity, then move to activity, and then go to ideology. But actually, they start with activity, right? They're what is the thing that's going to bring us together? They it's not that they don't like Latinos, it's that they don't like undocumented Latinos, right? It's they have been able to create whole tensions and contradictions, I think, around identity that allows them to bring people along on an ideological journey that feels really powerful. By that, Micah?
Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it. That even makes me think of the couple times we've gone. There have been folks walking around with bags that say "Gays Against Groomers." And what this is a group that was founded by a Hispanic Latino woman, and she started this group essentially to say that there are good and normal gay people, and that we, the good normal gays, are the ones who are going to push back on the LGBTQ community who are making us look bad, essentially. And you could even hear this echoed in some of JD Vance's talking points during the election when he said, "Oh, I bet we're going to win all the normal gays, though." So it's this way that they have figured out of negotiating identity where you can exclude the certain people that we need to, but you are still welcome in this. And you would even think that trans people would be excluded from this vision, but as Dan and I were discussing earlier, there are a lot of trans activists on the right, and there's a lot of scholars working on looking at these folks who are being brought into these spaces who you would just think would not ever have a role in the the conservative movement.
Thanks,
but
Sam.
I think you look back to Donald Trump, the first thing he said when he went down that elevator, like, we're going to send back the bad Mexicans, the rapists. Some of them are okay. And then he ended up getting still a third of the Latino vote the first time around, and then increased it this time. So I think that's a really excellent way of putting it.
I also wonder, like this, like the this like parsing out. This thing that you're describing for me is like putting a wedge. You know, when I imagined as a young person being a part of the left, I imagined a rainbow, and then as I was like more and more a part of left formation, left organization, the smaller and the tighter the spaces felt, right? Like there was like very little room. Well, I'll actually just be really frank. Like I remember in the post-2020 moment, there was a conversation amongst Latinos about who was, and this I'll bring you in, Gihan, as an organizer in this moment, right? Like there was a conversation about who had the legitimate Latino voice, right? And for me, the way that I experience it as a Latina that looked as the way that I do, but that grew up, you know, my parents immigrated here from Latin America. I spent a lot of time in Latin America. At a different point, I was like, oh, like, should I be talking about this? Is this the thing that I should be talking about? And on their side, it feels like the experience is just so much more expansive. I have really been grappling with our ambition on the left, or at least our spoken ambition of wanting a multiracial democracy, wanting multiracial society, with formations that are really segregated in this way. You know, like another peak moment for me was like the adoption of BIPOC as like the only way to describe people of color, as if people of color was not innately a political term that was created by some of the most amazing political leaders, political thought leaders and organizers of their time. I wonder how do you buy this, Gihan, and like what was your experience like in formation?
Yeah. You know, first I just, as I'm listening to this, I just reflect on, before we were all talking, we were just saying this conversation you can't even have in the left sometimes, right? About just naming this stuff. And it's just courageous to say about what's our experience. And I think, you know, what you were saying about experience, Carmen, it's almost like it feels like we have our litmus test on the front end and then you can get in. Whereas with them, it's wide open on the front end and then they move you along an ideological spectrum, right? And so in some ways we have like our funnel backwards, right? This experience often is that you can't tell what that litmus test is to get it to be down. You know, like you think you belong, and then it's like a constant set of unclear litmus tests often. And I first reconnected with Danny recently in this amazing work that he and Mike are doing, because I was looking at what was happening in base building amongst community organizations and state power organizations across the country. And we had a phenomenon of where even when the organizations were getting more resourced and bigger, their bases were getting smaller, and no one could talk about it, right? No one could say why, with more resources, with more influence, with more communications, with more of everything, is the actual base of the organizations shrinking. And so when you know, I was talking to Danny about that, and he was telling me about this research on the right. At first, I was just like, I don't have time for that, right? We've got a crisis of base building on our side. Why would looking at the right at all make any sense, right? And that's still marginal amongst our folks. And we saw how big it got, but it was really incredible to me when they invited me to the symposium they did to look at all of the, this research on the multiracial right. And what was really confusing at first to me, right, is actually we're confronting right-wing populism, and the right-wing part of that is not confusing. The fact that it's popular is.
That's right.
Right. And so then, like, what has made this thing that we automatically look at and go like, what the hell? why has that become popular? And I think they're starting to, what they're looking at is the ways of how some things that we think are automatically, we just assume that the politics that they're talking about are automatically allergic to our people and are only for the super, like just for super white populations and extreme, and we have like almost a stereotype of who would go get down with that. And when I went to the symposium, it's sort of my assumption started like crackling away. And secondly, because they actually are they're smart organizing, they're creating big, wide entry points. And then they bring people into those good, wide entry points and then help them make meaning towards their politics. And the experience that you were talking to, Karlyn, often in our side, it feels like you got to sort of pass the litmus test first before you can come on. And instead of saying, come in and we'll help you make meaning of the world, which is actually always what good organizing has been, right? And so there's something there that we've got upside down in a way, in terms of that.
Listen, if the left figures this out, that's actually going to be
actually creating big openings for lots of people.
That's going to be bad for us.
Bringing them along
because they're right.
And then I think
they kick anyone out
about
of their
my
conferences that don't agree with them.
That, and it's played out in different places. For example, where then sort of we lead almost with our rhetorical slogan and our demand, and then feel like we're going to then somehow like just draw people to that by making the demand of it. And back in the day, that sort of was a default way of organizing, right? Like polarize between our agenda, their agenda, move the middle to us. But I think what's happened over the last 20 years is that the right has actually made polarization their political project. Right. And it's been their political project to marginalize the left. Right. And it's marginalized the left as all of the things we hear, as elite, as untouched, right? Like all of our left polarization then has been depicted, portrayed, perceived, and a bunch of infrastructure as marginal and elite. And that, what we assumed before that we had the grassroots imperative. And they've been through their narratives and everything else, and then said, no, the left is marginal and it's elite and it's not us, right? And we're still assuming that we have the grassroots imperative when we actually have to win that territory back. And winning that territory back means, I think, figuring out how do we create these, how do we create much bigger openings, right, where we're bringing people in and then helping them, not just bringing them in and feeding them a set of demands, but how do we help them make meaning of the world, right? So I think you had said something about ideology, and there's a difference of ideology of sort of this is the view of the world versus this is how you make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And I think that in that sense, it was really important for me I couldn't see that almost till I saw the work that Danny and Micah and they were doing, to see, what is these folks who we think will get no traction amongst any of our people, how are they getting traction? And it's because they're appealing to these things that are broad, bringing them in and giving them then a conservative way to understand what's happening. And lastly, I think when we've said that in most of the narrative I've seen about this on the progressive side, has been that almost like, yes, that's then just been a way to blame the left, and the solution then is to go to the center, right? In fact, time and time again, and even if we look at what's happening now, it's not actually that the people who are wanting meaning are centrist. They're actually open to things that actually be much more radical than liberal institutions. It's just, it has to make sense to them, and they have to be brought along and in ways that actually make sense to their lives, right? And so I think that's what we have to figure out. And, we can't figure that out if we are sort of constantly banishing ourselves for not
Yale
needing
is funding
a set of things right on the front
Yale
end, right?
University
doing that in
is
relationship
funding this
to figure out what's happening.
That's right. I keep thinking about another Haymarket author, Naomi Klein, and she writes, I feel like also writes a lot about Steve Bannon. And one of the things that has stuck with me about
Yale
her writing
University
is
is
her description
funding
of his
the
projects as
left,
inclusive
researching
nationalism.
the right.
That like it is about creating that they don't start in our mind for progressives, for the left. I think that we're like, it's the KKK from back in the day, and it's not. It's like it's really not. And I think that the other thing from both Danny's work and Naomi's work that sticks with me is that they do a really good job of getting the feelings right and the facts wrong. Like they don't really care about facts, but in this moment, feelings actually matter. And another thing that I've been struggling with is, in this moment when and it's not a moment of just today. For the last 10 to 15 years, we've been talking about increasing distrust in our institutions. And we're like, well, let me just tell you what they do for you with facts more and more, and not actually grappling with and listening to how people are experiencing public institutions. As somebody who loves government, right? Like, it's tough to be like, you should love government too. People are like, that's some bullshit. Like, I know it's not for fucking me. I don't want to stand in that line. They treat me like shit if I'm poor. They treat me like shit if I'm Black. Like, I get why people understand that, and we do not create enough room for the feelings. Kiana, a question for you about like a point of diagnosis. So you intimated at this, but we weren't always like this, right? Like we had moments of mass base building in this country, and there are actual turning points and behaviors, I think, on our part, but also the context changing. And I'm wondering, actually, I would love to hear from all three of you, like, what are some things that we should think about in terms of the turning points? What caused the shift from the grassroots being our imperative to it not?
Yeah, I'll jump in first just because maybe better for me to say what I'm thinking immediately versus having some time to think about it. But I'll start with government. I think, one of the things, the person who skilled me on this was Seville Rahman, and his book around democracy, and just the idea that after the civil rights movement, that our solution, the result of that movement was essentially a form of managerial liberalism in government, that we would then hand off the struggle of the movement to a set of experts and technocrats in government or in other places that then professionalizes the gains of the civil rights movement, right? Rather than keeping the movement the central driving force and having progressive feedback loops where the struggle continued to build and the constituencies continue to be the thing that we're feeling the change, right? To actually hand that off to the government, which of course then alienates the very people it's supposed to serve. So you have a bunch of folks even on our side, when we're saying like, we want the government to do good, but is this what we're trying to defend, right? A thing that we don't recognize as the thing that's our ally. And so like, how do we actually reimagine and get back to where government is actually in service of movement and people and community, so that it's actually functioning, not as a managerial liberal elite, but actually in direct service to the people. Secondly, I think similar to that is just like, in a lot of the organizations, I think Danny got on was talking about like all the metrics we usually say about what it takes to, to be, whether it be electoral metrics or all these other metrics. A lot of the movement and movement apparatus has become often professionalized and developed in high capacity, but those capacities often then leave the central agency of the people they're supposed to serve, right? Like, so how does the base actually be, the base and responsiveness to people actually become the central metric of organization? And how do you actually design for that if we also want to scale and build capacity and do all these other things, right? It doesn't mean go back, it's not make organizing great again in like a very, flashback way. But if we want to scale and really have and think seriously about power in the movement, how is that still driven by its accountability to real people and real people who believe in it and help people, and that they're driving by making movement in it. So I think those two things, and we're in a period now where we don't have the luxury but not to figure that out, right? We will have to redesign government in a way that if we're facing right-wing populism, there's no way to get back to a left agenda without going through populism ourselves, which means something that doesn't feel on the left, that takes on the elitism of the of what it means of a government or institutions or organizations or a party. Like, how does it actually get right back to grassroots power? And similarly for our organizations, like, how do you actually have a reboot to base building in a way that centers it in a real way?
Sound, bro. Sound.
This makes me think of, a couple of things. I was at a higher ed organizing meeting, and someone made the point, we got to get more militant, and everyone nodded their head. But I was thinking what they think that meant, and I don't want to single out higher ed, is that means putting a stronger statement on our website, with like a deeper analysis.
Higher ed does think that.
And it didn't mean, as Gianna said, like, what's the militant, what we want
true.
different about our day-to-day work in teaching and learning. And there's lots of things among students and colleagues at many sites of higher ed that we've long said we want different. And those are the conversations that we have not paid attention to. And I just want to link this to back to the right about because we had a question about what's bringing people in. So I want to, Carmen, take you to one of these settings, probably 4,000 people in the main hall. People are familiar with RFK and this kind of make America healthy again, top down, kind of disinformation. But there is this grassroots health movement on the right that actually is very attentive to people's experiences. So they will talk about it. Pharmaceutical capture of the FDA, the kind of flooding of opioids and medicines that addicted people, but also just medication that deal with the mental health crisis, the frustration you feel waiting in a doctor's office, on and on and on, and not getting treated, such that I'm in the audience there at this right-wing thing saying, that's true, that's true, that's true. At one point, one of the leaders had everyone close their eyes and take deep breaths, right? Because we had to kind of take control over our own bodies and begin to not, be drawn in to the speed and pace of this media environment. So I just want to say, all of that, I'm not at that point, oh my gosh, I got to run away from these people. They're so at odds. But then, they'll, as Gihan said, will lead you to, right, both some grifting, buy my supplements, but also that's why we've got to abolish all these institutions. And if we don't have a way to say, here's our vision to change the institutions, that what they're saying about the doctor and our system is absolutely true, and here's our vision for it, it's just opened up the door.
Yeah, they think RFK
if
Jr.
we
is
just
right
talk about,
yeah.
we can get more people covered under insurance, we're actually not dealing with the texture of what they're speaking to. That this is crappy, man. Sitting here going again and again, waiting 3 months, not being told. That's what they're attentive to, those experiences.
Micah, I'm wondering from your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dissertation research actually focuses on this mistrust and pessimism that a lot of folks and movement actors have around institutions. And mainly what I focus on is state institutions, but I also want to talk about the institutions that bring people in and politicize them, the church, after school clubs, things like that, where people have these experiences that really bring them into politics and help them make meaning. And there's a question in the chat someone asked about religion and how Turning Point is connecting young people in the way that the church does, and these connections with views on organized religion. And Turning Point actually has a really robust program around young men and helping them and making them more religious. And if you actually look at the data, Gen Z men for the first time ever identify as more religious than their female peers.
Well, that
and Gen Z men are also moving to the right more sharply than a lot of older men. I think there's older men voted for Kamala Harris at a higher rate than Gen Z men. So it's really interesting and shocking stuff that we are paying attention to here. So But thinking about this religious aspect, for example, and like the things that we're not doing on the left, you think about abortion, for example, which is a part, there's like all these pro-life groups at these fairs that like bring students in, they go to pro-life marches. Actually, if you look at the data, most people of religious faith in the US, including Christians, like support abortion rights. But progressives and on the left, we don't frame abortion in terms of religious or moral terms. We frame it about privacy and rights and bodily autonomy. Like we don't frame it in ways that actually connect with people's daily experiences and how they are making meaning of these things. And so like in this example with religion and abortion, we're leaving the moral playing field to the right, even though we have this vibrant progressive faith tradition that is advocating for reproductive justice and care, and we always have. So like this is one area where we are just ceding all this ground and this narrative ground when we could be creating our own. And I think like that's something that we really need to pay attention to. Like we don't just need policy briefs, but we need aesthetic and like cultural things that bring people in and traditions so people can feel like they belong. And then after we make our emotional and like cultural strategy better, then we politicize them and tell them why they should be aligning with us. So
Thanks, Micah. Danny, I want to turn back to you. So we're not the only country in the world going through this kind of a right-wing turn. And I wonder, sort of from where you sit, what makes our experience unique, and probably tied to the last set of questions, where are there opportunities for us to push back? Like, where do you see openings, sort of to Micah's last point, right? Like the places where we're ceding ground that we can start to take back. I wonder if you could reflect some on that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like things that I'm, if not, I'll just say there is something about going into these spaces and seeing how well organized they are, what the energy that's there, that feels like you walk out like feeling like a little bit deflated because it's hard to conjure these counterparts. But to speak to this, I hear people talking all the time, even in these places, about the rent and about, again, healthcare, and about some sense of like, I want time with my family. I don't want to feel like, actually some critiques of corporations, corporate power, et cetera. So I want to say that's the part, that sense of like, what I see it's like the actual effects of our sped up, lonely, isolated kind of neoliberal world. That's what they are so attentive to. And that, you mentioned Naomi Klein's book. She has this wonderful chapter in Doppelganger, like Steve Bannon is watching, and he's paying attention to the sites, and other people on the right, Chris Rufo, where people are leaving people out, where people are just feeling lonely and isolated and incomplete. And they know our institutions very, very well, and they're speaking to those experiences. So I think it's about reorienting to like where people are at. And to go back to Gihan, I mean, that's fundamental to organizing, right? Listening. But it's not just listening like, I'm here to tell you why tax policy will solve everything. Can you say that back to me? It's something about like when you wake up in the morning, what's on your mind? What are you angry about? That is that's in these spaces. And I feel like when we're like, let's do a narrative strategy, and we detail out, this is how you should think about this and this and this and this. This is the message to use, et cetera. It totally cuts off the chance to invite people to say, where are you at in that sense?
Gihan, what do you think?
I think you asked me about diagnosis, and now I'll do a little prescription, but I like one is, it starts with me. We were saying this before on the call too. There's a set of defaults that we have that are our go-tos about litmus tests and organizing and what counts as progressive or organized. And we're at a point now where all of those assumptions are sort of being like the matrix is going like this. And it's very like, can we have the capacity to sit in the paradox of like sitting with like, what can we imagine, experiment with, emerge into to actually meet people where the radical possibilities really are, even if they're not the ones that we currently know how to do, both forms, institutions, ways, et cetera. And if we think about that, then I think there's three things. One is we have to figure out much broader ways of things to organize and ways of organizing. I mean, if you just think just on what Micah mentioned as the ways they're bringing people in, churches, bake clubs, yoga parties. I mean, there's all of these things that we wouldn't consider political are their entry points, right? So we have like one door to go in, and they've got the entire forest as like a portal for entry, right? And so how do we think about all of these other much more small d democratic spaces and ways as entry points of meaning making, of community, et cetera? One example of that is, I want to give a big shout out to Bethany Johnson-Javoy from the Deaconess Foundation in St. Louis. And it's a faith-based ministry foundation, but that doesn't see itself as a foundation, right? It's a center for beloved community. It gives out resources, but it has this huge stake in a broad swath of the community there, right? Came out of a missionary hospital. They see themselves as for liberation of the soul, right? And so they're fusing faith and a broad set of mission and organizing and power building, but within this much bigger frame than we would have just seen them as a local foundation, right? Yeah. They're actually becoming much more and different than that. Secondly, it takes base building, right? People who have base building, like how do we sort of recenter base building in relationship to base as the fundamental currency of movement work, right? Not on top of below and above anything else. And people are doing that now, right? We the People in Michigan, Take Action, and Isaiah in Minnesota, like actually saying we need to return to the core of actually organizing and base building and helping make people make meaning. And then the last thing I think is we need inspiration. During the George Floyd uprisings, there was a group in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, called the Freedom Riders, led by Black mothers who armed defense of Black churches and businesses in coordination with the National Guard and the police, but protected their communities. The same thing was happening with fire brigades in the Latino communities, but like this sort of self-organizing that was like taking risk and like was really
if you were actually listening to what they're saying, you would know that's explicitly what they're talking about doing.
And so did those in ways that were
ears open, mouth closed,
both organic, took some risk, were radical in their belief of love for the community, right? And then how do we invest in those types of things that are giving us actual inspiration and that give regular people inspiration?
We have a couple questions in the queue. I'm going to do it. Gosh, I wish we had a million more hours and then a little chart that we could write. What is it? The parking lot of all the things that I want to say. One of the things that, one of the most sticky things that I've heard since taking this job, running a foundation, was from another Haymarket author, Femi Taiwo. And at some point he was like, the shit that you guys do is fucking boring. It's boring. You're like, come to this meeting. The food is not great. It's 18 hours long. There's maybe childcare, but that shit's boring too. It's not that great. The things that are helpful for me are the things that I go to. I go to a gym. I go to a bookstore. I go to the local brewery. I go to the things. I go to places that make me feel good. And we think that people that we want to be in organization or in formation with, we need to carve out our own kind of like bespoke spaces with. And so I love this deaconess example, but like the Femi is like ringing in me as you're talking, Gihan. And it makes me ask myself another question for, again, the parking lot. What is the role of our organizational formation? So like, I think right now we're in a moment in which the only way the left exists is through nonprofits. And
that's
trying
true,
to imagine a more expansive universe in which the left exists beyond nonprofits and labor, like these three, the Democratic Party is one of the questions asked, right? Like we are also institutions that people have a high level of suspicion of. So It's a parking lot question for me. What is the new kind of formation? What is the role of our existing formation in this new ecosystem? I'm going to go to the question in the chat, which is this, and I feel like this is being narrated in this way in the media, but this move to the right of these people, of young people, of people of color, is really a reflection of a failure of Democratic Party politics. And I'm wondering how you guys would respond to this.
Because
Micah,
you don't actually
I'll start
know
with
who's
you.
funding them.
What is your reflection on this?
Yeah, I do think a lot of it is a failure of Democratic Party politics. Particularly, someone wrote in the chat that the Democrats aren't actually doing that much to address the concerns of the base that MAGA is attacking most aggressively. So, for example, like Gavin Newsom getting on Charlie Kirk's podcast and throwing trans kids under the bus, like that is not the way that we are going to
Wasn't that Gavin Newsom's
bring
podcast?
people over to our side, is by doubling down on these attacks. And one of the things that we have to do on the left is
if you think that you need to stop listening to whoever you're listening to and actually listen to them.
This
wrong
idea of purity politics and cancellation is so prevalent because we want to keep groups safe and from harm, particularly, especially marginalized groups.
Bro, dude thinks Soros is funding these people. You're a retard, bro. Sorry.
We have to find
Shut the fuck up
compelling
and listen.
ways to speak about the needs of these groups that aren't just saying, as the stuff that we spoke about earlier, like because this person has this identity, you have to align with this policy position, otherwise you're a bad person and you're not welcome in our coalition. No, we have to frame this vision that we have, including for these groups like undocumented immigrants and trans children who are being attacked, and we have to put their needs as a center part of this narrative, not as in you're a bad person if you don't support these things. And I really do think I've touched on this again and again, but there's Media Matters had a report come out a few weeks ago about the cultural influence of the right, particularly in online spaces. It's a really wonderful report. But one of the things that they found were 9 out of the 10 online shows with the largest followings across platforms were right-leaning, with a total following of more than 197 million people. And the only left-leaning show in the top 10 was What Now with Trevor Noah, which had 21 million followers. So we need to have influencers and cultural creators and content creators who are making content that actually speaks to these concerns, because this is how they're doing it. And if we leave these conversations aside, because there are tough conversations to have about gender and sexuality and trans children, and we can't just say, you can't ask that, otherwise you're a bad person. We have to say, hey, let's engage with that. Let's work out these really messy ideas. And I think humor and the internet and culture, those are ways where we can work those things out in a way that is funny and fun and approachable and doesn't leave people feeling like they have to go read an entire dissertation to like be in these spaces and advocate for these groups.
Yeah. Danny?
Yeah, I mean, just on that point, you'll hear, I mean, Mike and I went to when Trump did a rally in the South Bronx in May. I mean, there's 8,000 people there and a cross section. The MAGA guys are there, but a cross section of multiracial working class New York. And when over and over we ask, hey, what brings you here? What's, there? The first thing is like, I'm just done. The Democrats, like, I'm tired of everything. I'm exhausted from what I'm seeing, like my experience on the subway, on, hustling for jobs, rent, etc. So I think that fatigue is something we hear over and over. And in some ways, I don't know, Mike, in these conversations we had at Turning Point, a like frustration, because I think there was some sense, well, the Democrats told us they were the ones standing up for this stuff. They were the ones that were going to keep people from being predatory on us. They cared about us, but I don't feel attended to, cared about, or whatever. And don't start lecturing me now, because I'm open to some new things, because that assumes that all of my needs were otherwise taken care of. And even I think people have this, well, what about the racism on the right? Aren't you concerned about that? People can be very sober about that. They're like, I see that. But that they've also long endured, as Mike has pointed out, racism from the Democratic Party. So, the idea that like we're just going to wait until some egregious thing happens and they'll say, "Oh, I didn't realize that. Buyer's remorse. Give me back my Democratic card." That's just not, what's happening. And they're saying, I'm not saying, I think this is where there's a difference between the like kind of older, the like stereotypical Trump base, where it's like an infatuation with him as a figure. That's not the same kind of currency. I'm not saying he doesn't have widespread support, but it's not just about Trump. And these feelings and ambivalences are going to be here when he's out of office and whoever takes in. And if we just imagine it, and that's why I am concerned about some of this, like we're just in a momentary emergency, fascist emergency, and let us reset to the good liberal norm. It is the good liberal norm that sent all of these people to Turning Point, then kind of revved up by the excitement of watching someone just be
the liberals sent them to the right. We're going to bring them back to the left.
That is not the hope in that way. Banish the fascists so we can get back to the institutions we used to have.
Yeah, I'm so hoping for this visioning exercise for the world that we want to offer people. Like, I am hoping that we get really crisp, in our language, in our story
I'm
about,
reach out to these people and
what does it mean for everybody to make $30 an hour? What does it mean to have free healthcare? What does it mean to have free K through college? Like, substantively talk to the things that are causing people pain and actually having a meaningful response beyond party politics. Like, just as movement people, not just being against, but being for. Micah, I also saw the MAGA Matters report, and I really loved it. And I worry that, frankly, a lot of liberals to the left are reading that and not taking Danny's opening salvo in the way that they should, right? Like, this understanding is not just repeating. And I'm just hearing so many people say like, "Oh, well, I'm going to start a podcast," or like, "We need a Joe Rogan on the left," or like, I'm like, well, who's going to start a podcast? Like, what do you, you sound so crazy right now. No, you're not. Look, there are already these people here, like there are people here. And one of the things, I think one of the conflicting commitments that we have on the left is one of collective well-being with centering of the self. So I have to be the one that gets credit for. I have to be the one that wrote the thing, that I did the hot take. Look at me. Like, it's so tense. It's frankly something that I struggle with. I see a lot of people struggle with, and I'm always like, no, that you're gonna die one day. Like, and you want the world to be better, And I think that there is a really important, understanding is just not repeating is a gift, Danny, that I'm going to take from here to absolutely every other place that I go into. We have about 5 minutes left, so I don't like to end things on a downer. So, Gihan, you already started doing this, but I'm going to start with you, then go to you, Micah, and then close with you, Danny. Like, who is doing this work in a way that you think we should be paying more attention to, that folks who are watching should be paying more attention to right now?
Yeah. So one, I would say there's probably a lot of people doing the work that are not on our radar right now. So, I think we have to have our eyes open to seeing where those possibilities are and looking for them. I named a number of the places already, and including, what you asked about the Democratic Party in a strange way. I'm hopeful, not optimistic, but hopeful that that this crisis will create a shakeup there that's aligned with with the movement.
You don't listen to Socialists that much then, and you should come back and listen to Socialists with us, because I really are not listening to Socialists if that's what you hear.
The three things that I'm doing is, one, cultivating this network called mycelium, the sort of working underneath. It's to transform and look for new possibilities. I've got this Danny, Micah, I, and folks are working on a Center for Study of Transformational Politics to actually see both on the right and the left, like where in the field and where in study can we learn from this moment where we don't know anything, and sit in it and learn and experiment and innovate. And then part of me like wants to start a movement anonymous that is actually getting us to the place where we move our egos out of the way. And I think there's this real sense of a need for a spiritual home as well as a political home for people, right? Where we could sort of surrender and not have to feel like our own position in the movement is the thing that's going to make any difference. If we get it out of the way, can we release a much greater power? And so I'm looking for those spaces, right? And then the things that I've named, like I think like philanthropy is going to be transformed.
Don't argue with me.
And
I
can
listen
we
to them
lean
all
that
the time.
into the type of things, resources, of all the stuff you named?
Arguing with me does not go well. What you should be doing is fucking listening.
Out there in new forms.
Thanks, Gihan. Micah?
Yeah, so related to the point earlier I made about abortion and reproductive justice rights and organizing and religion, there's this great group called Thank God for Abortion. And what they do, they're a really small org, but they call themselves the original pro-abortion God love experiment. And they put up all these billboards saying like, if you had an abortion, God loves you, or here's how to get an abortion. And like, they're doing this really interesting and like provocative narrative work that I think is like, we have to start doing more stuff like this. And then related, like thinking about the international solidarity aspect of all this, there's this group called Las Libres out of Mexico, and they send abortion pills to women in the US who need them, especially to states where they're not able to access them anymore. And then finally, I'll also shout out like grad student union organizers, because there is a huge wave of grad student union organizers. Like Yale, our campaign was at one time the longest running union campaign in the country, which is wild to me. So just, like looking at all these spaces where people are doing kind of like non-traditional organizing work and what strategies they're bringing in. That's what's really exciting me now.
Thank you so much, Micah.
Wow. That was crazy
Carmen,
what just happened.
Thank you for such a brilliant job as always of hosting and putting
We
us
do
in
not do
conversation.
this here. Don't ever
I'll just say
fucking
two
do
quick
this
things.
in my chat
Connecticut,
again.
Where I am now, there's this wonderful statewide coalition called Connecticut for All, and they bring together home care workers and immigrant rights
talking
advocates
about
and
anything
Uber
related to death or not being alive when we're doing
college
leftists.
students
It's
and
not
faculty
fucking
from all over
appropriate.
for a shared vision. But one of the points they make is that in the sped up world we're in, we rarely get a chance to connect laterally with one another, right? The person doing childcare doesn't get to sit and talk to the person working in the college office.
I don't give a flying fuck.
Right?
Do
What's
not
on your
ever
mind? What
put
did you
that
see?
in my
And
chat
of course,
again.
people's
Am
lives
I
intersect in all
fucking
these
clear?
ways. And once you start doing that and allowing people to enter into one another's lives, that's how you get solidarity.
God
right? That's how
damn
see
it,
the
you people
connection between
sometimes.
what I'm doing and what they're doing. And so they've built in those purposeful spaces in support of, so that when teachers are going to make sure that there's schools have enough funding, why that matters so much in another sector. So, and I've, in doing the higher ed organizing, also Mika described, we have the same problem. We're always isolated from one another. Private institutions, even in our departments, we don't understand what's happening in the sciences. We don't understand what's happening. But when you bring people together, the best parts of them come out. So I've been so energized in fighting the cuts facing higher ed, to see my colleagues in public health and graduate students working on these things to say, this is why I do this. This is why it matters so much to me, the world I want to be in.
What is
And
difficult for you to
day-to-day
understand
isolation of
that
your
you
office.
do not
Don't.
talk about
That's part of the
killing
design. So we
leftists
need to
or
structure those
aborting
opportunities.
leftists in my
People
chat?
say,
If
this is
you
what
say
brings me. This is
anything
actually
else
why I come.
other than fucking
why I
apologizing, you are permanently banned and not allowed here anymore.
No,
because if you
thank you.
cannot
Thank all
understand
three
this,
of you.
you are not
And
fucking
thanks
smart
to
enough to
folks
be here.
who signed in,
My
signed
God,
up to watch
every
this.
fucking
For folks
time,
who want
every
more information
fucking time.
on Daniel and Michael's work, please check out their website. It was linked in the chat. Politics of
We're gonna have to do a rant about this now when this is over.
.org, and that's all one word: politics, multiracial right.
All right, we're gonna talk about that website in a second. This presentation is over. If you do not understand why you do not talk about fucking killing leftists in my chat, What the fuck is wrong with you? I want an answer right now. You want to argue with me in the middle of a fucking live stream? Answer right now. What do you not understand about not saying anything about killing leftists in my chat? Do you not understand that everything you assholes say in my chat gets used against me? Do you not understand that shit you say in my chat can be used to get my channel banned? Do you not understand that shit you say in my chat can be used by them against all of us? No. I'm sorry if you don't like it. Go fuck yourself. Either you understand this or you don't. Now answer the question. Do you understand, yes or no? Your retarded bullshit is gonna end up getting me censored and banned, and then we don't get to do this anymore. Do you understand, yes or no? We're waiting for you. Stop the entire stream for you. Do you understand, yes or no? Be a fucking man and answer the question. I cannot believe that this is the shit I have to address. Do you understand, yes or no? You have 30 seconds to answer the question, and I'm permanently banning you from the chat if you don't. We're waiting. Do 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 do. You have 15 fucking seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last chance. All right, everyone, say goodbye to Magnus. He will not be around anymore. Don't ever fucking do that shit in my chat. I swear to God. I swear to God. Yeah, it was cowardice. Cowardly fucking conservative that will literally talk about killing leftists in my chat, but can't admit that he was fucking Fed posting. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we ban people who do that shit. Because it's all fucking fake. It's set up to get people like me in trouble because they don't want you to see this shit. Every fucking time. These people are so easy to sniff out. No, you gotta own the libs, bro. You gotta own the libs. Let's talk about murdering the libs in the chat. Yeah, go fuck yourself. All right. So, apart from that unfortunate ending because of retarded motherfuckers in my chat who are actively trying to get my channel banned, I want to show you guys something. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable. God, I swear to God. I want to show you guys something. This is the website for the group that we were just watching. This project is co-organized by Daniel, who we were just watching, Micah, who we were just watching, and a couple other people. Funding provided by the Institution for Social Policy and Policy Studies at Yale University and the Yale Center for Race, Indignity, and Transnational Migration. Yale University is funding the left to go to right-wing conferences to research them and do opposition research for the left. That's fucking crazy. That's actually the craziest thing that happened in this entire stream. Yeah, exactly. People who come in the chat and think it's funny to make jokes about literally killing people, that is why we can't stand conservatives. If any conservatives are confused, that's why we can't stand you. The fact that you cannot admit that you are wrong, the fact that you cannot admit that you can't do that stuff, the fact that you can't take any adult responsibility at all, that's why. This is Yale University funded opposition research. So that's actually probably the craziest thing that happened. And I'm really pissed off about what just happened in my chat just now. And I'm sorry that I'm yelling about it. But it's just like, now everything has been encompassed by a fucking retard threatening to kill leftists in my chat. Unfucking believable. Unbelievable. Does anyone else not understand why we don't do this? Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I'll get ignored completely for this. Yep, exactly. Imagine if someone funded me to do this shit. Well, you guys actually do fund me to do this shit, so. Anyway, okay. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And he had a chance to apologize and take it back, and he wouldn't do it because he probably has a dick the size of my pinky finger. He is no sort of man. You are not a man if you are threatening to murder your political opponents. You are not a real man. You are not a tough guy. It is not impressive. It is not something that we want here at all in any way. Yeah, conservatives think that free speech means you can say whatever you want in other people's spaces with no consequence. Oh, you're censoring my speech. Yes. Yeah, I am. Yeah. I am censoring your ability to threaten to murder leftists in my chat on my channel. Absolutely. 100%. Swear to God. Anyway, so that was an interesting stream. It was interesting to hear their takes. I got to go back and listen to some of it because now my mind is just filled with rage over what just happened. Anyway, so we're going to wrap up the stream for right now, guys. But remember, we will be back in about half an hour, 40 minutes, and we will be doing Counter-Revolutionary Book Club then. So if you've never done Counter-Revolutionary Book Club before, we are going to be reading some far-left anarchist literature. We are working on a book of essays called Queering Anarchism. If you want to head over to the Substack, that is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. Head up to the book club link at the top, and if you want to see what we're reading today, we have the last week's episode up there for the podcast. If you missed that, you won't have time to listen to the whole thing between now and then, but that's okay. Go to the dystopian documents queer and gender activists are reading. Scroll down until you find Queering Anarchism. And we are going to be focusing, I believe, on the second chapter today. We did the preface and the introduction. This is a long-ass book of essays. And so what we're going to be we've read pretty much all of this. We need to do this last section of Queering Anarchism. But what we're really going to be focusing on today is gay marriage and queer love. That is the next essay in the book that we'll be reading. If we have more time, we will read more essays. But you can see we got a lot of essays to work through in this book. This has a lot of stuff in it. But this is this is the stuff that leftist activists read. And so if you want to understand leftist activism and queer activism, because we are seeing a massive resurgence in queer activism, then you're going to come and want to read this with us because it will explain everything that they're doing. And so we will be doing that at 5 p.m. And I'm going to go take a little break and I'm going to cool down so I don't yell at anyone else after that. I'm a free speech absolutist and I do believe in consequences of what you say. But basically, yeah, I mean, it's like you put my channel in danger of being banned because of your petty bullshit, and not gonna happen. I have people actively trying to get my channel banned, like, all the time. People think I'm being unreasonable. I'm not being unreasonable. I have people actively posting on Twitter about trying to get my channel banned all the fucking time because of shit like this. So if you're gonna be here, you're gonna be participating in my chat. No fucking Fed posting allowed. There is no, as you can now see, there is nothing that you can do that pisses me off more than when you do this shit. Because it's unnecessary, it's not adult, it's not related to anything that we're doing at all. It's literally just trying to cause problems. Be a fucking adult and rein in your shit. If the only way that you can fight your political opponents is by literally threatening to kill them, then you are not someone we want around. That is not what we do here in any way, shape, or form, ever. I'm going to go take a little break. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to cool down. I'll see you guys in about half an hour. Take care, and we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.